Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at property address 5959 Southeast Angel Lane here in Milwaukee. I describe everything as if you are standing in the street facing the front of the house. The line comes out the front of the house here, but right at the front left corner. There's your hose bib just around the corner from it, that tells you. It's tucked into this little notched out spot. 3-inch ABS clean out. We're going to insert the camera. We will zero the foot counter out. We're coming in here. The home inspection just finished up. I mean, quite literally about 15 minutes ago. The lots of water's been down line. We'll introduce a little bit here, but plenty of water's been down this thing. From the sounds of it, I think this has recently had some fixing done to it too. So that flow line, and I don't know the extent of what was replaced and what wasn't. Just from the sounds of it, I believe something was repaired. But this line looks like it's had a little bit of usage on it just based on the film that's on the inside of it. What I'm getting at here is this is exactly how you want your sewer line to look. It's incredibly clean, and that is made possible by about one living habit, and that is not putting cooking oil and grease down your line. Just transition there over to 4-inch 3034 PVC. Got a little bit of a wonky joint there. That joint slipped a little bit. There's a little bit of black rubber fern coat in between the joint. I will notate that on the report, but as it sits right now, there is no signs whatsoever that joint is open to the ground. What you generally are, and I've been doing this 13 years, I've cambered 25,000 sewer lines at this point. When you get a joint, especially in plastic pipe, it's very, very obvious because the pipe, that's the coloration of it. When a joint is open to the ground, what you're going to have is pretty obvious signs of it. You'll have groundwater drip stains going down the sidewalls, if not dirt sticking through the joints. Earthworms crawling around, water droplets dripping through, roots is another pretty obvious one. And that joint there, it almost looks more like they cut the pipe in an imperfect line more than anything. When I look at the top there, that cut just does not look like a perfectly straight cut, like they cut it at a slight angle. So by all accounts, the joint is not affecting flow, and that joint also does not show signs of being open to the ground. Nothing obvious anyway. And then we tie right into the manhole. There's a manhole that's essentially straight out from this clean out, just off the street curb. I'm going to go locate to verify that's where we're terminating here in just a moment. But it would be, I would like to know when the repair was done, just from the standpoint of, you know, for instance, if this line was just repaired last week, and even still, most likely the joints are sealed up. But if something has just barely been installed and it hasn't had the chance to go through a rainy season yet, where you get lots of heavy water saturation in the ground, sometimes joints that are compromised in some manner won't display themselves until they've been through that kind of rainy season where you get hydraulic pressure. The joints I'm seeing in here, by and large, I mean, anytime I see joints like this, nearly 100% of the time in plastic pipe like this, they remain sealed up. So, and by the looks of it, the way that there's grease staining, this looks like this was repaired a little while ago. Not yesterday, but probably within the last year or two is my guess. So, if it's had a chance to sit through all those different changes of seasons, that's a good thing. And the reason you need it to go through a season like that, when you have a joint that is somewhat compromised, not gaping wide open, but somewhat compromised, it will only display that under hydraulic pressure, where you get lots of water saturation in the ground swells up, creates pressure, and forces stuff through the joint. Joints like this do not let stuff go through them passively. You have a rubber seal there, so it's not something that easily occurs. From what I can tell, everything looks closed up here. And we just let some water go through the line and drain out. We're going to go locate, and then we'll pull on back in. All right, the line does indeed tie into the manhole. It's straight out from the clean out, just about 3 feet off the curb. All right, so a little bit of a wonky joint here at about 30. We'll call it 37 feet. And by wonky, I mean you have a very slight offset. In the world of offsets, this is very, very minor. And you have a slip, which is where the joint has partially separated. So up at the top of the pipe there, you have a little bit of staining. It's hard to say, though, if any of that's related to something that opened to the ground. You can get staining like that very easily just from usage. And then another one here at about 32 feet. That section of pipe there shifted. One thing I am going to do here real quick, I noticed it right at the street curb. You've got a spot there that's caved in, and that could easily be from excavation. Sometimes ground is not ultra compacted. You know, from the get-go, they go dig it up, they bury it, and either the same amount of dirt's not put back in its place, or the dirt that was there was not actually fully compacted, and so it's kind of settles in. You've got about a 1 foot or more depression in the ground right at the street curb. And so my locate right here, and granted my camera is diving at a pretty hard angle. It's not an ideal spot to locate. Ideally you're in a kind of flatter spot, but I'm picking this up. I'm essentially right at the face of the curb, not directly on top of this spot. But I mean, what catches my eye about that is when you get a joint like this that is somewhat questionable, there is indeed some level of staining in and around it. It's hard to know, though, if that staining is for sure, you know, it's not some level of grease buildup. If you see the line right here in the flow line, you've got a little bit of brown staining. That's likely grease. And you have a little bit more of it on the other side. You've also got some stuff there at the top of the pipe that I am not seeing prior to it, at least in this section right here. So the concern there is the joint open to the ground, and is it leading to hydro erosion? This joint here, again, a little bit of separation. That joint is spiffy clean, though. There's zero staining there whatsoever. The joint out there, I think my foot counter may have... Oh, sorry. I'm thinking out loud here. I apologize. That is a little bit suspect, and part of the reason it feels that way is you've got a very obvious depression in the ground almost directly on top of that. And that's the concern with joints like that, is sometimes if they are indeed compromised to some extent, they can start sucking groundwater and dirt through them, and it can cause hydro erosion. So it's hard to know with certainty if that's what's going on. One of the ways you can figure that out relatively easily, and there's no guarantees, but one of the ways we test for that is you do a load test. You drag a garden hose over there, and you stick the garden hose in that depression, you let it run. Sometimes you let it run for a couple hours. You've got to make sure that all the ground in that area there gets completely saturated with water. You run a camera back through the line, and you watch to see if anything is percolating or migrating to that pipe joint. That is one way you can test for that. And when I see a combination of a joint there that's questionable and a very obvious depression on top of it, it's something I think I'd recommend here. And it would also be worth checking to see when the repair was done, whether or not the repair companies offer any kind of warranty on that kind of thing. But anyway, that makes me a little bit nervous, you know. And so again, like I'm saying, if it was a recently done repair, sometimes you just get ground settling. It's hard to know. So possibly compromised joint there at 37 feet. The one at 32 feet looks so clean. It does not show any signs whatsoever of being open to the ground, albeit there is a little bit of separation at it. You've got rubber fern coat in between there, and generally speaking, those fern coats, if they're cinched down properly, will keep things sealed up even if they shift a little bit. The one there at 37 feet, though, is looking a little bit different. That one there has got more staining at it, and it's in different locations. It's at the top of the pipe, for one thing, where nowhere else in the line do you have that same kind of debris deposits. So that one I'm calling a possibly compromised joint there. You know, due to what I'm seeing on the inside of the line and also above the line and the ground there. Otherwise, the rest of the line here all appears to be in good condition, buttoned up. The line overall has great flow. It's a very steep angle the line runs at. Everything's cruising through there at a very nice rate of speed. So from a flow standpoint, line is functioning properly at this time. A little bit of a question mark there at 37 feet, whether that joint is completely sealed up or not. And then I shot backwards there at the very end, looking through the foundation wall. No settling going through the foundation wall. Everything from that point back is all exposed piping. That's stuff that the home inspector, they can just look at with their eyeballs in the crawl space.